Please open your Bibles to Psalm 37. We will be looking at that passage. This psalm was assigned to me several weeks ago, but it turns out that it's a very fitting psalm for the events of this past week. What do you do when the bad guys are winning? In his old age, King David wrote this psalm, and it deals with a contemporary issue. It seems like the wicked often prosper, while the righteous often suffer. Psalm 49 and Psalm 73 also deal with this same theme, but we're not going to cover 3 psalms tonight. We're only going to cover 1. And in fact, I have 40 verses to cover, so it's going to be kind of an overview, a flyover, so to speak, of Psalm 37. We won't be able to get into all the words, all the verses in a very detailed way. But just this past week, we've seen this theme demonstrated. The bad guys are winning while the righteous suffer. Maybe hard for you to read here, but for some of you younger folks, the pose that Mrs. Clinton is making here is reminiscent of the pose that Richard Nixon made, who was known as being a lawbreaker, as one of our presidents. And she says, "The FBI says I am not a crook." And then we have a rendition of Mr. Comey with the FBI. "We determined it was secretive, sloppy, and extremely careless. But hey, she's a Clinton." So on Tuesday of this past week, FBI Director James Comey gave a 15-minute speech laying out the transgressions of Ms. Clinton in her handling of classified emails on her private server as she served as Secretary of State. And in the end, he decided not to recommend charges against her. On Wednesday, the very next day, the Attorney General Loretta Lynn declared that the Department of Justice would not pursue charges against Ms. Clinton. I don't want to get into a debate with you after church, but many feel like justice was not served. So just like in King David's era, the bad guys are winning while the righteous suffer. On the very same day that the Department of Justice declined to prosecute Ms. Clinton, the nation was preparing for the opening of the Ark encounter. This is a life-size replica of Noah's Ark in Kentucky, and it's an effort to present a biblical view of Noah's flood. In the previous days, supporters had gathered for a preview, and so an article was written in the Courier-Journal, which was the main newspaper for Louisville, Kentucky. The article was entitled, "Ark Park, Ready to Set Sail in Culture War." In it, they quote from Jim Helton, head of the Tri-State Free Thinkers, who's opposed to the project, and he said, "This isn't a tourist facility for family fun day. This is a church, and it's a dangerous church. It tells children that you can't trust science, and it's the same people who deny climate change, who try to stop marriage equality." And if you'll notice the little cartoon here, they're poking fun at the righteous. The people that are going to go park at the Ark Park for the grand opening are the people that believe that Bigfoot is real. Kim Davis is real. And if Kim Davis is the lady that would not sign the marriage license. Remember who that lady was several months ago? Went to jail for a period of time. There's a bumper sticker there making a statement about homosexuality, but kind of in a funny type way. Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Climate change is a myth. So they're just poking fun at Christians, mocking us. And again, I don't want to get into debate about Bigfoot tonight after church, whether you think he's real or not real. But the fact stands that in our culture, the bad guys are winning. And the righteous are suffering. We're being made fun of. We're being poked at. We're being made to look like we're idiots. But I want to make it another point. It's not just in the culture war about the Ark. It's not just in the FBI, but it also has hit our police force. In the deadliest attack on law enforcement officers since 9/11, a black man who was angry at white people, especially white officers, went on a shooting rampage in Dallas this past Thursday. 5 police officers were killed, 7 police officers were wounded, and 2 civilians were wounded. You know, our policemen are in danger every single day. They don't know if they're going to come home from their shift alive. Folks, we have people right here in our congregation at Morningside that serve us in the role of policemen. You need to thank them. You need to thank their families for the sacrifices and the effort. In fact, here in several months here at Morningside, we might even have a day where we honor our policemen. Many times they go without honor, and we want to show here at Morningside we appreciate our policemen. But you know what? Those illustrations are kind of out there. They're like, you know, that's the culture. That's things that we don't deal with. I want to bring this passage in more personal. What do you do when the bad guys are winning? Imagine with me that you're a young girl. You desire to please God with your life. You want to be pure. And yet you notice that it seems like the girls that are around you that are getting the guys are the girls that are willing to give away their purity. It seems like the bad girls are winning. That if you want to get the guy, you got to give away something that God says don't give away. What do you do when the bad girls are winning? Or maybe you're a young man and you excel at sports and you want to do sports the right way. And yet you notice that the guys that seem to excel at sports and win are the guys that are doping. They're not clean. And you realize that I'll never excel like the next guy if I decide to be clean. What do you do when the bad guys are winning? Maybe you're a college student and you do your best to make the grades. You have to maintain a certain GPA to keep those scholarships. And if you're a college student or a parent of a college student, you know how important scholarships are. You depend on them. And so you look around and you say, hey, it seems like other people are making the grade because they're cheating. They're not putting in the hard work. They're plagiarizing. They're cheating off of each other's tests. It seems like if you really want to win in school, you've got to cheat to get ahead. And so you're tempted to throw in the towel, to quit trying to be righteous, to quit trying to do your best, and say, I'm going to cheat my way through college. What do you do when the bad guys are winning? Or maybe you're a middle-aged man and you're trying to provide for your family. Your neighbor sits around and he boasts about how he's dishonest in business. I mean, he's deceptive with his business practices. He brags about not paying his taxes. And you look across the driveway and he's driving the nice cars. And they're going on those nice vacations. And you're sitting there and you're paying God and you're paying Uncle Sam and you're trying to be honest in business and you're barely making it. And you're thinking, is it really worth it to be righteous? Is it really worth doing the right thing because the bad guys seem to be winning? Or maybe you're an older lady and you want to please God with your tongue. But it seems like whenever your group of friends get together, it's just a big gossip session. And you decide, I can't do that. That's not going to please God. And you take a stand for righteousness, and pretty soon you find that you're not a part of the group anymore. You're not invited to the get-togethers. You're not a part of the let's go after church to do something because you want to do the right thing with your speech. And it just seems like the bad girls are winning. So no matter what age you're in, and I maybe didn't make an illustration that hit you tonight, but we all struggle with what do you do when the bad guys are winning? When the bad guys are prospering and the righteous are suffering. This is not a new issue. All the way back to the days of Job, we find this dilemma. Why serve God when the wicked prosper? Listen to Job chapter 21. Wherefore do the wicked live, become old, yea, are mighty in power? Their seed is established in their sight with them, and their offspring before their eyes. Their houses are safe from fear, neither is the rod of God upon them. Their bull gendereth and faileth not, their cow calveth and casteth not her calf. They send forth their little ones like a flock, and their children dance. They take the timbrel and harp and rejoice at the sound of the organ. They spend their days in wealth, and in a moment go down to the grave. Therefore they say unto God, depart from us, for we desire not the knowledge of thy ways. What is the Almighty that we should serve him? And what profit should we have if we pray unto him? Boy, when you look at the wicked and they're prospering, do you ever ask yourself, am I on the right side of this? It seems like I'm on the losing side. It seems like I'm on the side that has to make all the sacrifices. It seems like I'm on the side that if you do the right thing, you pay for it. and it hurts, and it's no fun. And they get all the fun. They prosper. They seem to have an enjoyable life. What am I doing on Sunday night? I'm in church. They're out on their boat. They're having a great time. So what do you do when the bad guys are winning? Well, this poem here in Psalm was written to answer that question. It's a maskil. It's a teaching psalm. It's also a wisdom psalm. Think of it like the book of Proverbs. This psalm is really like some Proverbs put together. It is an almost complete acrostic using Hebrew letters of the alphabet to start successive phrases of the poem. And you could divide it up into 4 symmetrical divisions, 11 verses, 9 verses, 11 verses, 9 verses. And that's how we're going to look at it tonight in that division. And we're going to answer the question in 4 questions. What do you do when the bad guys are winning? So take your hand out there, and along the way there will be some blanks to fill out on the screen. When they show up, the blank will be underlined so you'll know what word goes in your blank. So the first thing to do is, what do you do when the bad guys are winning? Well, number 1, resolve to be fruitful, not frustrated. Resolve to be fruitful, not frustrated. So first of all, don't be frustrated when the bad guys are winning. Look at verse 1 of Psalm 37. It says, "Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity." Let your eyes go down to verse 7. "Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not thyself because of him who prospereth in his way, because of the man who bringeth wicked devices to pass." Look at verse 8. "Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not thyself in any wise to do evil." So do you think the psalmist is wanting to get across here? Don't fret, to put it in today's terms. Don't worry. The term here means to become excited or to be angry. And what are we showing when we look at the wicked and they're prospering and they're doing so well and we turn to fretting? What are we saying? God, you don't seem to have this under control. God, I don't like the way you're running this. God, I think you're messing up. And you're fretting and you're worried and you're a nervous Nelly. And the Bible is saying, when the wicked prosper, don't fret. Don't worry. But the second thing is, don't envy. Don't envy. Look at verse 2. Well, back up to verse 1. "Fret not thyself because of evildoers." And it goes on, "Neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like the grass and wither as the green herb." So don't be jealous. Don't be envious of them. What happens when you envy someone? You want to be like them, don't you? And that's the danger, is you're a young person and you look at the wicked and it seems like that is the lifestyle I want. And you're tempted by it and you're jealous of it. It seems like, man, I see that kid and he's got all the cool shoes and all the cool clothes, but I know he steals them. And I wish I could look like that, but I can't afford that. And I can't steal, can I? And you're envious and you're desirous of maybe following after that path. And the psalmist is saying, don't envy the wicked. They're like grass. They're going to wither away. Their end is not going to be for very long. And so, don't envy the wicked. Number 3, don't be angry. Look at verse 8. "Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not thyself in any wise to do evil." You know, when you get angry, you're doubting the sovereignty of God. You're doubting the goodness of God. To use even the wickedness of men to praise Him. And if you look at the events of this past week, and you may say justice was not served, and people are getting away with things they shouldn't be getting away with, and the Christians are being mocked. Do you think somehow God lost control this past week? Do you think He's sitting up in heaven like, oh no, this was a bad week? I don't know what happened. The things got away from me. No, God never lost control any day, any hour, any minute, any second of this past week. God was in control of every one of the events we saw, whether it was a shooting or whether it was justice or whether it was Christians being made fun of. God was completely in control. We have no need to be angry. We serve a God that's sovereignly in control. So don't be frustrated. But not only don't be frustrated, but be fruitful. There's a positive side to this. How should you respond? Well, respond by trust in God. Look at verse 3. Trust in the Lord and do good. So shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed. Verse 5. Commit thy way unto the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. So let me ask you a question. Do you really believe that God is in control? I mean, if your kids were to walk away from the supper table after you've had conversations this past week, would they walk away thinking, you know what? I can tell my parents are trusting that God is in control. Or would they walk away thinking, man, my parents are frustrated. They act like the world is falling apart and God is dead. Trust in God. Not only that, but do good for God. Verse 3, trust in the Lord and do good. You know, trust is accompanied by good actions. It's not just sitting around, so to speak, and saying, well, I'm trusting God. No, there's an action on our part. There's a willingness to say, I'm going to do good. I'm going to stand for righteousness. I'm going to maybe protest peacefully. I'm going to be a voice for righteousness. I'm going to call someone. I'm going to write someone in a godly tone, in a godly way. I'm going to maybe do something about the politicians that we have. I'm going to stand for those who are standing for righteousness, try to support them. I may run for office myself. You're saying, I'm going to do good in this situation, because the alternative is to let wicked men prosper and do nothing about it, or to join the forces of the wicked. And that's not the right choice. The right choice is to say, I'm going to stand for right. My family is, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So do good for God. And then number 3, delight in God. Delight in God. Verse 4, delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Now, taken out of context, this verse could be just seen as a blank check. You know, hey, God will give me whatever I want. But let me ask you a question. If you delight yourself in God, where will your desires be? They'll be godly desires. And God delights in honoring godly desires and fulfilling godly desires. And if your desire is, I want to know more of God, I love God, I want to know him intimately, and you're delighting in him, guess what? He will reward that, and he'll say, you can have all of me you want. I will reward that. You can get to know me, because I will be near the person that wants to know me. I will let you get to know me. I want to know you. So delight yourself in God. Contentment comes when we realize God has everything we need. Jim Berg has a book called God is More Than Enough. And isn't that true? God is more than enough for every need that you face. So delight yourself in him. Find joy and pleasure in knowing him. Number 4, commit your ways to God. Look at verse 5 and 6. Commit thy way unto the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. And he shall bring forth thy righteousness as the light, and thy judgment as the noonday. The word commit here has the idea of to roll over. You know, if you're carrying a big burden and you say, here, honey, you take this. Have you ever had maybe your wife, she's trying to carry groceries or something, and it's really more than she could handle, and so she says, can you help me? And she rolls over that burden to you. And now you're carrying that burden. And you know what? God says, I want you to roll your burdens over to me. Commit them to me. In her book, Beyond Ourselves, Catherine Marshall writes about learning to surrender her whole life in a prayer of relinquishment. She would encounter situations where she would be fearful. And she would come to God in a panicked and demanding spirit of prayer. Maybe you've been there before like that. You say, God, I want you to do this, and God, you got to do this, and God, you got to handle it this way. And you're coming to God not in a spirit of submission and a spirit of God, you're in control, but in a spirit of demanding. And it wasn't until she would get into a mode of saying, God, I surrender this situation to you. You can do exactly as you please, that the fear would leave and the peace would come. Have you come to a point in your life where you're committing your way to God, not demanding your way to God? You know, where your prayer is really like a 3-point plan for God. You want to tell Him every morning, God, I have a 3-point plan for you today. This is how I think you should act today on my behalf to make me happy. But really, God, I'm surrendered to you. I'm committing my way unto you. And you know what? God can work with a heart that's surrendered to Him. So commit your ways to God. Number 5, be still before God. Be still before God. Look at verse 7. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Fret not thyself because of him who prospereth in his way, because of the man who bringeth wicked devices to pass. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not thyself in any wise to do evil. For evildoers shall be cut off, but those that wait upon the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. This idea of rest and waiting has the idea of to stand still or to keep quiet. And both ideas are at play here, and it's patience. It's quietly waiting before God. Maybe you can understand what it's like not to wait quietly. Maybe your child or your grandchild comes up to you and they want your attention and you're involved in a conversation. And so you kind of give them the pat on the head or something like, wait just a second. And they're tapping you and I'm over here, don't forget me, it's been 5 seconds, And they are not standing still. They are not waiting patiently. And you know what? Many times we act the same way with God. And we're sitting there and we're waiting, we think, but we're not waiting patiently. We're not standing still before God. We're agitated. We're frustrated. We're fretting. We're worried. And God wants us to stand still before Him. Rest in Him. How many of you have ever made a phone call? It can be frustrating to make a phone call. You do a million buttons, and you say into the phone, speak to a representative, speak to a representative, speak to a representative. You just keep saying that. Hopefully I can talk to a real person. You're trying to talk to somebody and you find yourself on hold and 5 minutes clicks by and 10 minutes clicks by and 15 minutes clicks by and you're thinking, am I going to get to talk to somebody? And finally, you just hang up. Forget it. Now let me tell you, when God puts you on hold, don't hang up. Don't get frustrated. Stand still. At the appropriate time, God will pick up. And He'll say, hi, son. Hi, daughter. I'm here. I'm ready to act. So stand still before God. God may want you to wait instead of go to war. You're ready to, do something about this problem, this injustice that's been done, and God's saying, be patient. The great New England preacher Phillips Brooks, he was noted for his poise and his quiet manner. But at times, he would suffer moments of irritability and frustration. And one day, a friend saw him pacing the floor. And he says, Dr. Brooks, what's the trouble? Dr. Brooks says, the trouble is that I am in a hurry, but God isn't. And how many times do we act like that? God, I'm in a hurry, but you're not. And we need to rest and wait patiently for Him. Jonathan Goforth was a missionary to China, and he was convinced that there was this certain city in China that this was where God would have him labor. But he became discouraged. He checked out the city, and he was mobbed. He was threatened when he visited the city. And for 6 frustrating years, he was prohibited from going into this city to minister like he planned. And finally, the doors opened up for him to go into this city of Changti. And within 3 days of reaching the city, 35 offers of land had been offered to him. Among them was the site that he wanted as the most valued site for his ministry. You know what? God is never in a hurry, but He's always on time. At just the right time, God opened that door of ministry for Jonathan Goforth and said, here you go. This is what you've been waiting for. I'm opening the doors for you. Are you maybe waiting for God to open some doors of opportunity, doors of ministry, and you're frustrated? You're impatiently waiting. Let me encourage you tonight to rest patiently, stand still. Don't hang up while God has you on hold. because He's always on time to answer our need. So be still before God. And then lastly, be meek. Be meek. Verses 10 and 11, for yet a little while, and the wicked shall not be. Yea, thou shalt diligently consider his place, and it shall not be. But the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. You know, meekness is power under control. So instead of the meek being run over, they're going to experience the peace of God working out His plan on their behalf. So be meek. So, lest you get restless yourself, the first point will be the longest point. But let me encourage you, when the bad guys are winning, don't be frustrated. Be fruitful. Secondly, remember the fleeting success of the wicked. You know, the wicked are God's laughingstock because He knows their end. Look at verse 12. The wicked plotteth against the just and gnasheth upon him with his teeth. The Lord shall laugh at him, for He seeth that his day is coming. So if we're going to be fruitful and not frustrated, we have to remember the fact that the fleeting success of the wicked is just that. It's fleeting. It won't last. And God looks at the wicked man and says, you know what? I find it hilarious because I know his end is not good. An atheist farmer ridiculed those who believed in God, and he wrote a letter to his local newspaper. And he boasted, I plowed on Sunday, planted on Sunday, cultivated on Sunday, hauled in my crops on Sunday, but I never went to church on Sunday. Yet I hauled in more bushels per acre than anyone who believes in God and goes to church. Well, the editor put the letter in the newspaper, but the editor added a line at the end of the article. The Lord doesn't always settle His accounts in October. And you know what? The wicked may be boasting and saying, hey, look at what I'm getting away with. Look at how good things are. But let me tell you, God doesn't always settle His accounts right away. The wheels of justice are turning, and He will show justice, if not here, then in eternity. So the wicked are God's laughingstock. The wicked also sow their own destruction. Look, verse 14 and 15. The wicked have drawn out the sword and have bent their bow to cast down the poor and needy and to slay such as be of upright conversation. Their swords shall enter into their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. So here's the wicked, and he has plans, bad plans for the righteous, and guess what? It comes back and bites him. And the sword that he planned for someone else becomes his own undoing. Does it remind you of the story of Haman and Esther? The gallows that he prepared for Mordecai were the gallows that Haman himself hung on. Let me tell you, the wicked sow their own destruction. Number 3, the strength of the wicked will be broken. Look at verse 16 and 17. A little that a righteous man hath is better than the riches of many wicked. For the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but the Lord upholdeth the righteous. What they've depended on for their strength, their arms, are now broken. But God uses His arms, and He upholds the righteous. So the wicked and their strength will be broken. And then verse 18 to 20, the wicked will vanish like smoke. The Lord knoweth the days of the upright, and their inheritance shall be forever. They shall not be ashamed in the evil time, and in the days of famine they shall be satisfied. But the wicked shall perish, and the enemies of the Lord shall be as the fat of lambs. They shall consume. Into smoke shall they consume away. You know, smoke is here and poof, it's gone. And that's the fate of the wicked. They're going to vanish like smoke. So when you see the bad guys are winning, remember, be fruitful, not frustrated. Remember the fleeting success of the wicked. And number 3, rejoice in God's faithful reward of the righteous. Rejoice in God's faithful reward. Look at verse 21. The wicked borroweth and payeth not again, but the righteous showeth mercy and giveth. For such as be blessed of him shall inherit the earth, and they that be cursed of him shall be cut off. So, first point is that the righteous enjoy God's blessings. The wicked are in a position where they borrow and they don't have the money to repay, but the righteous, he not only has money, but he has money to loan, to give. He enjoys the blessings of God. The righteous enjoy God's assistance in life. Look at verse 23. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholdeth him with his hand. One of the more popular verses out of this passage. But you know what? God is in charge of the steps of a good man. George Mueller, the famous preacher who had all the orphans that he cared for, he liked to add, yes, and not only the steps, sometimes also the stops of a righteous man are ordered of the Lord. And you know, whether you feel like God is ordering your steps or ordering your stops, either way, He's in charge. He's ordering each and every step or stop that you and I take. Paul Wiley is a Christian who was a famous skater who skated in the U.S. Olympics in 1988 in Calgary. He was nervous as he started his program with 20,000 people there in the stands and TV audience of millions. And he goes out to do his program, and he's on his very first jump, and something goes wrong. And he writes, quote, "A flash later my hand touches the ice. The blade will not hold. I start slipping, and now I realize it. I am falling. All I hear as I collapse to the ice is the empathetic groan of what seems like a million voices." And with a split-second choice, he could choose to take the mistake and just give up and say, that's it. I'm not going to win. You can't have a fall like that and win. Or he could get up and keep on skating and doing his best. And so just then this scripture verse from this psalm pops into his head. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down. He continued on with his skate, and he decided, I'm going to skate heartily as to the Lord. This is the verse that I talked with my son about before he went on his missions trip. To serve God on this missions trip, not for men, but heartily as to the Lord. Colossians 3:23. And here this athlete is remembering as he's falling the steps of a good man. He's thinking of this verse that he won't be utterly cast down. And he decides to skate heartily as unto the Lord. But you know what? That Olympics didn't turn out so great for him. He became in 10th place at the end of it. You don't get medals for 10th place. But Paul didn't give up. 4 years later, he came back to the Olympics. And in France, 4 years later, he took the silver medal. And let me tell you, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. And when you need to be picked up, God is right there to say, I want to pick you up. I want to help you. And when God says it's time to stop, you can be assured that He's right there with you. You're not stopped alone. The steps of a good man, every one of them, sad, glad, happy steps, hurtful steps, every step that you and I take as a believer, we do it with God by our side and a Holy Spirit that lives within us. So you can be thankful that as a righteous person, you don't take a single step that is not under the control and guiding hand of God who goes with you. But not only do the righteous have God's hand leading them, but they also have provision for life. Look at verse 25. I have been young and now am old, yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. He is ever merciful and lendeth, and his seed is blessed. Verse 25 makes me think of my mom. She likes this verse. I have been young and now I'm old, but I've not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. My mom didn't grow up with much. Kind of a poor situation. We didn't grow up with a whole lot even after she got married. I mean, we've not been a rich family. But God has consistently taken care of my mom. And you know what? Isn't it neat when you have a verse that you think of with your parents? I mean, that's a good connection to make. A scripture verse and your parents. That God has seen fit, now she's over 70, that God has seen fit to take care of this lady year after year, decade after decade. That's a testimony. How many of you as parents and grandparents are giving that testimony to your kids? Kids, God has taken care of me every step of the way. Some of your grandkids need to hear you sit around and not just tell stories about funny things, but also God's blessing in your life, God's leading in your life, the way God has provided for you, maybe the way God has taught you some lessons. And they need to hear your testimonies of how God has worked in your heart And you can say, folks, kids, grandkids, I've been young and now I'm old, but God has taken care of me all along the way. And they may act like they're not interested, but it may take root in their heart. And they, years later, may say, I knew I had a parent or a grandparent who trusted God, and they followed God, and God took care of them, and I serve the same God. And God will take care of me too. Let me tell you, if you want your faith passed on to the next generation, it's got to be contagious. It's got to be something that's alive to you. It's got to be something that your kids say, I want some of that. That's good stuff. If they see you just sitting around fretting and worrying and upset and frustrated, why do they want any part of that? They ought to be able to say, my parents rejoiced in God. Times weren't always easy. It wasn't always fun serving God. But they never quit. They never gave up. God always took care of them. And I want to serve that same God too. So I challenge you, many of you are gray heads here tonight. There's still a role for you to be like the psalmist David, who in his old age wrote this psalm for us. He's giving testimony of the provision of God even all the way to his older years. We ought to all give testimony of that, no matter what age we're in. So God provides for the righteous. We also see that the righteous are never forsaken. Verse 27, depart from evil and do good and dwell forevermore. For the Lord loveth judgment and forsaketh not his saints. They are preserved forever, but the seed of the wicked shall be cut off. The righteous shall inherit the land and dwell therein forever. You know, the blessings of the righteous extend to their descendants. And sad to say, the curses of the wicked also have an effect on their descendants. So the righteous are never forsaken. And then lastly in this section, verse 30 to 31, the mouth of the righteous speaketh wisdom, and his tongue talketh of judgment. The law of God is in his heart, none of his steps shall slide. The righteous have God's word as his companion. That's one of the rewards of the righteous, is that we have God's word to give us guidance. We have God's word to give us comfort. We have God's word to assist us, to tell us what our next step should be. And the righteous man has God's word in his heart as his companion. So when the bad guys are winning, don't be frustrated, be fruitful. Remember the fleeting success of the wicked. Remember the reward of the righteous. And then lastly, rest in God's future plans. God has a plan for the future, and that's, number one, to protect the righteous. Verse 32, the wicked watcheth the righteous and seeketh to slay him. The Lord will not leave him in his hand, nor condemn him when he is judged. You know, the righteous man may be a victim of a crooked court system, but God's not going to leave that righteous man forsaken. The Lord is there to protect the righteous, even when the wicked look for opportunities to oppress him. There's protection for the righteous. There's also eventual reward for the righteous. Verse 34, wait on the Lord and keep his way, and he shall exalt thee to inherit the land. When the wicked are cut off, thou shalt see it. You know, obedience leads to blessing, and disobedience leads to cursing. So there's eventual reward for the righteous. There's also temporary prospering for the wicked. Verse 35, I have seen the wicked in great power, and spreading himself like a green bay tree. Yet he passed away, and lo, he was not. Yea, I sought him, but he could not be found. I mean, here's this big tree. And the illustration is, and then the tree is gone, and you couldn't even find a trace of the tree. It was gone. And that's the fate of the wicked. I mean, they look so big, and they look like they're so prosperous, and it looks like their estate is just so grand. But it can be gone like that. And it could be no trace of it. And the temporal prospering of the wicked is something we should keep in mind. It won't last forever. There's also peace for the righteous. Verse 37, mark the perfect man, behold the upright, for the end of that man is peace. But the transgressor shall be destroyed together, for the end of the wicked shall be cut off. Boy, that's a great end, isn't it? Peace. That's something to look forward to. And then lastly, there's rescue for the righteous. Verse 39, but the salvation of the righteous is of the Lord. He is their strength in the time of trouble. And the Lord shall help them and deliver them. He shall deliver them from the wicked and save them because they trust in him. You know, God's the strength of the righteous. He's the deliverance of the righteous. Why? Because the righteous trust in him. So as we close tonight, I remind you, what do you do when the bad guys are winning? Well, resolve to be fruitful, not frustrated. Remember the fleeting success of the wicked. Rejoice in God's faithful reward of the righteous, and rest in God's future plans. Now, I can't tell you when God's going to settle the accounts, and it may not be in this life, but let me tell you, whether it's in this life, but definitely in the life to come, the righteous will be rewarded and get their just due, and so will the wicked. So you want to be on the winning side, even if you don't see the reward right now, even if you don't experience the reward for eternity. Choose the righteous side. There's some discussion questions I have there for you on your handout. Ask yourself, how do you respond when you watch the nightly news and see the prosperity of the wicked? I mean, if we could just film you watching the nightly news, are you, I can't believe you're talking to the TV and you're upset? And how do you respond when you watch that news? Number two, would others characterize you as a fruitful Christian or just a frustrated Christian? If we were to get a group of you together, maybe some of you older gentlemen, and we were to go down to Hardee's for a biscuit, and I were to bring some middle-aged guys or some younger guys to have breakfast with you, would we walk away thinking, wow, I hope I can serve the same God that they serve? Sounds like God's been good to those guys. Or would they walk away thinking, they're just a bunch of frustrated, cranky old men? That's not a testimony to leave. God wants us to be happy, joyful, grateful to serve God type of Christians, not frustrated Christians. Number three, have you been tempted to join the wicked because you envy their temporary success? Some of you younger folks may know what I'm talking about, but in the world of basketball, a big free agent transfer just happened. KD, Kevin Durant, left Oklahoma City Thunder. They were winning in the Western Conference 3-1 against the Golden State Warriors, and they blew their lead and didn't make it to the finals. Well, Golden State Warriors go on to the finals, and to the joy of my son, the Cavaliers beat them in the finals. Well, what happened at the end of the season? Kevin Durant was a free agent. There's a bunch of money going on in the NBA right now because of a salary cap increase. And so Kevin Durant shops his services around in the Hamptons, and he chooses the Golden State Warriors. It's kind of like if you can't beat them, join them. And you know what? In the world of basketball, you can do that. You can make a decision to go that way. But when it comes between the being righteous and wicked, you should never choose to join the wicked just because you feel like they're always winning. You've got to take a stand, and you've got to say, I can't join up with them. And some of you young folks here tonight, you are making choices about what you're going to do with your life and who you're going to serve with your life, and you look around and it seems like the wicked are prospering, and you're trying to decide, am I going to follow God or am I going to please myself? And I want to encourage you, follow God. That's the best choice you'll ever make. If you want to be able to write a testimony at the end of your life and say, let me tell you, I was young, but now I'm old. If you want to be able to write a good testimony, the choice to follow God will always be the right choice. It will always be the choice that will bring you peace and reward and blessing. It may not be the easy choice, but it's always the right choice, and the choice that God rewards. Fourth discussion question, what ways can you testify to your children and grandchildren that God has been faithful over the years to reward the righteous? Can your kids tell stories? Can your grandkids tell stories that let me tell you what God did for my parent or my grandparent? Man, they ought to be able to tell those stories like this. Let me tell you, God provided here, and I saw God work here, and I saw God bless my parents here. Because they've sat back and they've seen that God has been at work. Some of you are maybe burdened like, why aren't my kids, why aren't my grandkids choosing the same God that I serve? I ask of you, have you made your faith contagious? Is it something that they would want? And kids make their own choices. You can't control the choice. And maybe your faith has been contagious and they've chose to be immune to it. but are you doing your part to express the goodness of God, the greatness of serving God, so they walk away and say, I want to serve that same God? Well, Psalm 37 answers the age-old question, what do you do when the bad guys are winning? Don't be frustrated, be fruitful. Resolve to live that way. Remember the fleeting success of the wicked. Remember the faithful reward of the righteous. And remember God's plans for the future. It always pays to serve God.